For some reason, I'm sort of cursed. Is the child crazy? Is she gonna kill us? You know, what is happening? That shit is so good. Do we need to do a wellness check on Shuzo Oshimi, which I love? Oh no. Nope, I can't say that. I can't say that. Hi, I'm Sam. There's quite literally no one asking me to do this, but I should be working on a talk I have to give at work tomorrow, but I don't want to. So instead I'm going to tell you about all the books that I read in January. So I sort of alluded to this in a video last year. In 2024, I would like to switch up my wrap-ups a little bit. Instead of talking in painstaking detail about every single thing that I've read, I would like to focus more of my time and energy on the things that I either really, really liked or really, really didn't like. With that being said, I'm going to start my wrap-ups with the really mid-reads and just kind of like maybe say a couple things about the synopsis and or my reading experience, but yeah, I don't want to spend a ton of time on these. So I am lucky enough that so far this year, I've really only had one mid-read. Everything else has actually been pretty good. So that was The Perfect Child by Lucinda. This is pretty much like a thriller where it's like, is the child crazy? Is she gonna kill us? You know? And I think that's been done a lot. I did have high hopes because Lucinda is a psychiatrist who specializes in trauma, but pretty much like imagine what you think would happen. There you go, you read the book. So yeah, that's kind of all I'll say about that. I guess this next one was kind of mid too, so it's fitting that it's the first one. For some reason, I'm sort of cursed in that the first read I have every single year is very inconsequential. I could spend so much time planning it and trying to pick the perfect read, and last 2 years in a row, it's just been like very average reads. So this year, the first thing that I read was Long Live the Posthorn by Vigdis Hjorth, and that was translated by Charlotte Barsland. So I guess since this one was kind of mid, I'm gonna go kind of quickly on this one too. This is very much like a depressed woman moving through the world. She works for this like PR company. She doesn't really even know who she is or like what her place in life is. So like this was fine. I've read many other depressed women, unhinged women type novels that did this a lot better. So I think if you're interested, you could check it out, but it wasn't great to me. Okay, now we're getting on to the good stuff. This is the juicy stuff. This was the stuff that brought me a lot of joy. So I was able to finish this series that I started at the very end of last year. So I read volumes 5 through 10 of Happy Sugar Life by Tomiyaki Kagisora. So I only have 6 through 10 from the library, but I did read 5 as well. I can't remember if I've really talked about this a ton. I think I talked about it a little bit in my tier ranking video, but this is a super messed up girly pop horror manga. So this is essentially about a high school girl who kidnaps this younger girl and keeps her hostage in her apartment. And it's not even her apartment, it's an apartment of a man that she killed and like brutally dismembered. Basically, this is a very disturbing manga wherein pretty much every character is deeply disturbed in some way or has endured some sort of very intense trauma that has not been dealt with or sort of resolved. So now they are just out doing really messed up stuff to other people. Yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, I think you would like this. I think this is a very shocking manga. Like, even when I thought I had a pretty good idea of where the story was gonna go, it did have twists and turns. And again, even though these people are so messed up and like this older high school girl kidnaps this younger girl, they develop such a trauma bond. There are moments where even you as the reader are kind of like, oh, this is actually like pretty heartwarming. Like they finally found someone who understands them. But then when you kind of take a step back and think more about it, you're like, oh no, you know? So all that to say, I think if you're a horror girly, you would probably like Happy Sugar Life. It's only 10 volumes, it's completed, it's cute, fun, gory, girly pop horror, so you should read it. Okay, next I read another manga series. I read the entire series, and that is The Promised Neverland. So I made the mistake of watching the anime first, and the anime is the worst adaptation of a manga I've ever seen in my entire life. It literally changed so much. It left out dozens of characters. The ending was so rushed, and they literally condensed sort of like the final arc of the manga into like the last 30 seconds of the last episode. So do not watch the anime. But the manga is really good, the story is really good, so it is a shame that the adaptation didn't get more love. I have to be very careful about how I describe the synopsis because there is a lot of messed up stuff revealed in the first volume. So in the interest of not spoiling things, I'm going to be pretty vague about the synopsis. So this is about orphans who live in an orphanage with this woman that cares for them and loves them, and they call her mom and all that. On the surface, it seems like they're very happy, they're very loved and cared for, and despite being orphans, they really see each other as family. But there are a few unique things about this orphanage. The first one being, every day they take these really rigorous examinations that test their memory and their ability to understand and interpret patterns, things like that. And they get scored based on how they test, and I think other parameters too, like how athletic they are. So they all get scores, and then when they turn 12 years old, that is when they are finally adopted out of the orphanage. So I will say we are following 3 protagonists, Emma, Ray, and Norman. They discover some information about their situation that they shouldn't have, and then that becomes them realizing that their reality is not what it seems, and they have to sort of put their heads together to try and escape this twisted reality that they have found themselves in. So, okay, I feel like I was being so careful not to say anything spoilery. So this series was so good. Another one that was very twisty-turny. There were several times where I was like, okay, I got it now. I know where the story is going to go. I know how it's going to end. And then something would happen and I was like, wait. And I also really like series that aren't afraid to kill people off. You know, I do love series where characters have plot armor. Like if any of the Straw Hat Pirates die, I will kill myself. Nope, I can't say that. I can't say that. Well, anyway, basically, I do have characters where I am glad that they have plot armor because I will not be able to handle it if they die. But in this series, they set it up where it's like the threat of violence and death is very real. So I like that about this series. It's really violent and gory, and the characters are really smart too. So it's just really fun to watch them and like kind of play these mind games against each other to try to outwit each other. So it's a ton of fun, and I think you should read it, but don't watch it. I mean, you can if you want to, but like read it first, please, because dang, it's bad. Okay, next I read the new release from Ainslie Hogarth, which is Normal Women. So I loved Mother Thing by her. This was on my best books of 2022. Loved her. This was great. This was more horror vibes. Honestly, Normal Women is kind of like Mother Thing's less deranged cousin. In Normal Women, we do have this weird, sort of unhinged female lead. Yeah, she's sort of just this weird lady. She's recently given birth, and I think she's sort of like losing her sense of self after having given birth, and now she's staying home to care for her child full time. And then she gets really fascinated by this yoga studio in town that moonlights as a brothel. And she ends up befriending the owner of the yoga studio / brothel. And I mean, you can tell I like annotated a ton of this. A lot of interesting things to say about how women move through the world and what is acceptable for a woman to do for work. And I mean, was any of this really groundbreaking commentary? No. Danny, men are in pain, and they're causing pain, hurting us, killing us, hurting the planet, destroying everything they touch, obsessed with money, power, to the detriment of all else, to the detriment of life itself. We've been living in a world where the most powerful group has systematically had the basic humanity, empathy, the crucial feminine, stamped out of them since birth. Don't cry, don't feel your feelings, no pain, no gain. Take it like a man. No wonder everything is completely fucked. Our leaders can't feel feelings. So, you know, again, not the most original thought in the world, but it's like, yes, yep, But I also love Ainslie Hogarth's writing because she's just so funny. She has a funny way of writing things, and I giggle when I read her things. She is a funny lady, and I like reading her writing. I always laugh. I always annotate the ever-loving shit out of her books. So I think you should read Ainslie Hogarth. Next I read volume 15 of Blood on the Tracks by Shuzo Oshimi. Where are my Blood on the Tracks girlies at? Because this is getting kind of weird lately. I'm not going to spoil anything because we are nearing the end of the series. I think the series is going to be 17 volumes. But I've talked about this quite a bit on my channel. It's really about a relationship between a mother and her son, mostly from the perspective of the son. The series really kicks off when there is this violent event that happens on a hiking trip. And this violent event ends up really changing the son's view of his mother and of himself. So now, as we're nearing the end of the series, it's still really good, but it's getting to the point where I'm like, I don't know if I understand what's happening anymore. And starting with volume 14, we started to get these pages of text after the manga, and it seems very autobiographical. So I'm sort of like, Shuzo, are you okay? Is everything good? Like, do we need to do a wellness check on Shuzo Oshimi, you know? So, I don't know. I'm obviously going to finish the series. This series has been one of my favorite things I've read, but it's getting kind of weird, and I'm not really sure how it's going to wrap up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more closure in volumes 16 and 17. Next, I read something that was very uncharacteristic for me, but I think I saw this on a couple YouTube channels, and I am like so glad I picked this up, because if I had picked this up in a bookstore, I would not have bought it or considered reading it just based on the synopsis and the cover. But now that I've read it, I'm like, damn, that shit's good. So that is Stoner by John Williams. Can we get some commotion for all the tabs? Like, dang. So I got this used, and it already had a couple annotations in it from the previous owner, which I love. So I left all of their tabs in too. But this is about a man named William Stoner who was born super dirt poor in Missouri, and he ends up getting sent to the University of Missouri to study agriculture. But while he's there, he ends up realizing that he loves literature. So he switches his major to literature and ends up becoming a professor at the University of Missouri. Even just from the first page of reading this, I was like, oh, okay, John Williams knows what he's doing. I'm in good hands, you know? And I think it's because John Williams is a poet, and anytime a poet writes a novel, that shit is so good. That writing is going to be next level. You are going to have a fine time, you know? So that's what happened here. This is just a very insular, melancholy, sometimes heartbreaking look into this man's life and really into his soul. And there were so many lines, particularly kind of questioning the point of his life, the eventuality of death, the different types of death, what it means to die in a good way, what is a good death. So a lot of kind of morbid themes, but the way that it's written is just so heartbreaking. I just like wanted to give this man a hug. So even from the first page, like I said, we get a very clear idea of the impact or lack thereof that William Stoner had on the people in his life. Stoner's colleagues, who held him in no particular esteem when he was alive, speak of him rarely now. To the older ones, his name is a reminder of the end that awaits them all, and to the younger ones, it is merely a sound which evokes no sense of the past and no identity with which they can associate themselves or their careers. Freaking dragging the shit out of him in just like such a sad way. You know, it's not like they were even saying anything bad about him. It was literally just like, William Stoner, who? You know? Ugh, I don't know. To me, that's just so heartbreaking. He heard the silence of the winter night, and it seemed to him that he somehow felt the sounds that were absorbed by the delicate and intricate cellular being of the snow. Nothing moved upon the whiteness. It was a dead scene, which seemed to pull at him, to suck at his consciousness just as it pulled the sound from the air and buried it within a cold, white softness. He felt himself pulled outward toward the whiteness, which spread as far as he could see, and which was a part of the darkness from which it glowed, of the clear and cloudless sky without height or depth. For an instant he felt himself go out of the body that sat motionless before the window, and as he felt himself slip away, everything, the flat whiteness, the trees, the tall columns, the night, the far stars, seemed incredibly tiny and far away, as if they were dwindling to a nothingness. Okay, John Williams. John Williams really did that for us, you know? He did that for us. All I'm saying, guys, is you should be reading more novels written by poets, because I never read anything like that. That is so affecting and heartbreaking and atmospheric. So even though the synopsis of this might sound like, why would I care? John Williams, guys. He is an author you should be reading. Okay, yep. Okay, last one I read was a little shorty, and that is Of Cattle and Men by Anna Paula Maia, translated by Zoe Perry. Cover, do be serving. Love me a freaking nice graphic cover. I love pink, actually. I do love me some pink. I'm really glad I picked this up. This was really good. I obviously annotated the crap out of it. So you can tell this was very much influenced by Cormac McCarthy. It feels very gritty, and we're following this man who works at a slaughterhouse, and his name is Edgar Wilson. So Edgar Wilson is very methodical, and he has very high standards for how the cows should be killed. It's important to calm the cows, especially now that they seem so unsettled, that they have begun to run in panic into walls and over cliffs. Bronco Gill, the foreman, thinks it's a jaguar or a wild boar. Edgar Wilson has other suspicions. But what is certain is that there is something in this desolate corner of Brazil driving men and animals to murder and madness. So yeah, this was very good. Kind of similar to Normal Women though, where the commentary that this was making, you know, was this anything groundbreaking? I don't think so. It's kind of your standard, like, man versus animal. Who's the real animal? Who's the beast? You know, are we as humans exempt from being labeled as beasts just because we're smarter? Or is the fact that we're smarter and we still engage in such acts of savagery against other living beings what makes us even more beastly than animals? That kind of thing, which I love, you know. So don't get me wrong, I did have a great time with this, but I think pretty much any slaughterhouse book you read, it's really gonna at least touch on that a little bit. But I did really enjoy the writing. I would love to read more from this author. This was also kind of similar to Stoner in that we get a really close look into this man's psyche and thoughts and life. You know, he kind of also has this contemplative voice where he's kind of always like wondering what's the point of it all kind of thing. This book also deals with the concept and idea of being penned in and being caged. So just as the cows and cattle are caged in, waiting to die, in the same way, the men are caged in by their circumstances. You know, the men who work at this slaughterhouse are very poor. They don't have any other opportunities. So even though they have this illusion of freedom, it's like they're kind of also just caged in, waiting for their day to die too. I think this was really good, and if you're interested, you could read it too. Okay, so those are all 31 books that I've read so far this year. I feel like my year is off to a pretty good start. I feel like I'm prioritizing more quality over quantity, which I really like. Right now it is February 11th, and I'm still working my way through a single book that I started earlier this month. So I'm really having a great time reading more of what I own and getting back into annotating. I'm also going to be talking about some books that I bought recently, and I'm really excited to get into, so I want to share those with you in an upcoming video. I also have been kind of thinking about what I want to do for hitting 1,000 subscribers. I know some of you said a tier ranking video, or maybe like my favorite books of all time video, but I was thinking if I did a tier ranking, I would do tier ranking every Junji Ito that I've ever read. So I guess if you have a hard opinion, you could let me know in the comments. And you could also watch my other videos if you want. You could like this video. You could comment some other stuff about like what you're reading, or if you've read any of these books. Did you love them? Did you hate them? Any other books that are similar to these books that you think I should read? Let me know. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. Love you very much. Okay. Bye.